Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We've got a good day of training, a good week of training. If you're here live, which a lot of you are, we've got a lot of training lined up for this week, and I've got them all planned for next week as well. So we're diving into what to do when people don't respond to you, federal buyers don't respond to you. That's going to be today's training. But before I do that, let me just turn this one caption off here. Before I do that, I just like to say thank you to those showing up early and on time. It means a lot to me. It helps us as we put this training on. And so my tip for you today is to look at your target agency's federal FY 2024 budget, right? Independent of the continuing resolution that the Congress just passed, and hopefully, we'll push through fine, and the overall budget, forget about that, right? That stuff's noise. Yes, it's going to have an impact on us, but we can't really do a lot about it. But if we go look at our target agency, whether it's EPA or the Army or Homeland Security or inside of Homeland Security, FEMA, if we look at their budgets, we'll see a massive amount of information that allow you to plan for fiscal year 2024. So basically today through September 30th next year, and your own calendar year, right? As you go forward, you're setting your strategic plan for the next year. In the budget, you will find all sorts of information. You'll be able to find, understand more about what they're trying to get accomplished, where they're running into issues. You'll understand how many people they have, how much money they have, where they're spending that money on, what their top programs are, organizational charts. Some of the budget documents you find will be smaller things, 20, 50 pages, et cetera. Some of them will be several hundred pages. Browse through them. You don't have to read every single word, but go through looking for the stuff that would be really useful to you. I'll do a separate training at some point about how do you go through budgets and how do you really pull gems out. I've actually done some of those in the past, so you can look at it. I did it with the FY 2023 budget. So go back and watch previous training, but I'm going to do it for this fiscal year as well. Anyways, quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Again, it means a lot and it helps us as we push out. So by the way, just in that quick tip, we had 20 more people join live. That's why we do this. So now those 20 people are also here for your community. So engage with them. Okay, let me get started with the training, move over to my tech here. Okay, again, we're going to be talking about federal buyers not responding. And let me just make sure. I feel like I'm seeing this tech here. Hold on one second. That little starting at noon would have annoyed me. Okay, we're going to talk today's training about what to do when federal buyers don't respond, right? And this is when you're making phone calls and sending emails, et cetera, and it's just not getting any response back. I actually had a customer last week talk to me about this, and they were getting frustrated. They were about to write into like the third email, hey, it's just a yes or no question, just answer. And they're like, nah, I didn't send it, but that's what I felt like sending. I'm like, no, I get it. We all get a little frustrated when somebody's not responding back to us. Ironically, we forget sometimes that we're not responding back to the people who are trying to reach out to us, quickly or whatever. Even the people we want to get back to. That I'm definitely guilty of that. But sometimes what we do in sales is we think the worst. Rarely do we ever think the best, right? And when you can think the best, then you become a professional salesperson. Professional salesperson just means you're taking things in stride and you're seeing them for the reality that they are, right? We talk about sales as a numbers game. And so you play that numbers game. Well, part of becoming a professional salesperson, right, is this understanding that really things are going to be great. They're not going to be the worst, right? We don't think about the worst. We've got a lot of things going through our mind. But when you hit a certain stage, if you can make this transition in your thinking, you're going to start seeing things for what they could be, not for things that are all the doom and gloom that's going to happen. And in this particular training, that doom and gloom is federal buyers not getting back to us. There's this great line out there, quote, it's said in different ways, and you can go figure out who said this. But basically, paraphrasing it, the quote goes, you'll stop caring about what others think of you when you realize how seldom they think of you. You'll stop caring about what others think of you or, why they're not responding, et cetera, when you realize how seldom, how infrequently they're thinking of you. Sometimes when we think the worst, we're thinking they're thinking a lot about us and they're not doing something. No, that quote is telling us they're probably not even thinking about us, which is fine. It's our job to get to the top of their mind. So in today's training, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why they're not responding to you. And then I'll dive into a variation of that, these lies we tell ourselves. And when I say we, I really do mean us salespeople, right? we're doing this outreach, we're doing stuff. And so small business owners or business developers and capture people, if you're doing the outreach, sometimes we're telling ourselves these lies that are holding us down a little bit or holding us back. We're just making for a bad day. And I want to get you to recognize these lies so that you can stop telling them to yourself. It's things I have to do. I have to look at these on a regular basis. I am very experienced in sales, and I still have to remind myself of what I'm going to show you today. Number 3, we're going to talk about how to increase your chances of success, how to get people to pick up the phone or respond back to you, and then how often should you follow up is going to address the question I get asked a lot in outreach is, hey, I feel like a pest. Am I calling too much? No, you're never calling too much. So we're going to dive into that in today's training. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process A to Z, or in this case, research to sales, you're going to have predictable, repeatable results. That's what I want for you. I want you to be able to forecast, predict your success for 2024, FY 2024 and calendar 2024, right? I want you to be able to predict that success and then have success repeated over and over again. And that comes from following a process, putting in place a process and then following it. I'm here to teach you that process. Your job is to execute on it. Part of the process is just making sure people know who you are, right? We buy from those we know, like, and trust. And so in the chat, put your company name so people know you. Put 2 or 3 keywords so they begin to understand what your company sells. You just need 2 or 3 words, not a lot. Because right now, when people are going through chat, we look at it really fast. And so you just want to put enough that they get it. You know, I do SharePoint solutions or cybersecurity or elevator services and installation, things like that, that make it easy for us to go, oh, Jane, ABC company, ABC core competency. Also, this is your community. One of my favorite things about putting these trainings on every single day is bringing together people live in a community where you can chat with each other while I'm doing training. So you can definitely pay attention to me while I'm doing training, but you can engage each other, right? You can find people you might want to follow up on without there. And going with that, I want you to sit there and register for our No Nonsense Networking. It's our first networking event where I've always done training, tons and tons of training. And so here I'm doing a networking event. We have tens of thousands of people in our community. And I want to begin to start creating events that I can bring you together. And so this event's on October 17th. It's a no-nonsense networking event, meaning I'm not there to provide you drinks and, you know, hey, it was such a fun event. I don't want it to be fun. I want it to be useful to you. I want you to walk away from a networking event with 50 or 100 new connections that could possibly help you in your business goals. So consider joining that. You can see the website, I think somewhere around here is www.govconchamber.com/networking. Okay, so let's dive into our training, the meat of our training today. Why aren't federal buyers responding? It's really important. If you pay attention to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, somebody's going to put that in the chat for me because you're super nice. And I know my picture is like teeny in the bottom, but that's all right. I like holding the book up anyways. Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Habit 5 says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So when you're dealing with people who aren't responding, don't think about all the reasons that are, like I said, thinking of the worst. Begin to understand them. Think of the things they're going through. So I put some examples here, right? Kids are sick. They've got a family. Somebody in the family is sick. Their mom, their significant other, their kid, whatever it is, somebody at home is having a challenge. And that's why they're not getting back to their emails and phone calls at the speed we would hope they would, right? Maybe they're coming to work and they had a flat tire, and that flat tire is driving them nuts because they, today they got the flat tire and then they showed up late to work because they had to get a donut on, a temporary tire. And then they're trying to schedule to get the tire fixed. Then they got to take time off to get in. Well, that can go, a couple of days, and they're driving around on a donut and it's driving them nuts. It's not you. The reason they're not responding isn't you. It's them, right? They have a lot of reasons that are in there. Another personal reason is just they're buying a house, and maybe they're taking a lot of calls with the real estate agents like, hey, Neil, I see this house. You'll love it. Or, hey, we've got this mortgage at this percentage. Do you want to talk about it? There's these personal reasons, 1, 2, 3, that could be holding them back from responding to you. You've been in that situation, right? One way or another. Number 4, you're in the junk mail, just flat out. You came into voicemail and they don't even look at it, or you came into email and you went straight to the junk mail, or because you're calling or emailing a federal agency, maybe they just completely blocked you, right? So you need to make sure that your email's even getting through before you start worrying about whether they're responding. Maybe you can test that with somebody else. Hey, can you just check to make sure my email's getting through? By the way, a sidebar, that's a great way to start a new conversation with somebody. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to check. Can I send you a quick email? Sure. And then you follow up, right? It's a little around the curve there, out of the box. But number 5, right? Your email, this is a very common one. Your email and your voicemail, they're just getting buried. I get this all the time. I'm going to tell you today in this training that if you want a particular thing I'm going to show you, send me a message. And I feel bad sometimes when it takes me days. Sometimes it takes me a week or more to get back to people, but it's because I'll get 100 people. Right now, we have almost 100 people live, and I'll get all sorts of people watching the replays as well because it's instantly available. And so sometimes things get buried. I'm very interested in responding back to you, very interested in getting something to you. And you know what this is like, right? If you get a lot of emails, sometimes an important message begins to get pushed down. It doesn't mean you're ignoring it or you've had any thoughts beyond, oh, I got to get to that, and then it's out of mind. That's why we send emails sometimes, and we say, hey, just bring this back to the top of your inbox. That's a strategy for staying on top of somebody's mind. Number 6, right? And number 6, 7, 8, and 9, dive into what they're doing, right? You're sending an email and you're giving them more work. You're saying, I would like to talk with you. I would like to get a response from you. Whatever it is, I don't care whether you think it takes 2 seconds. You're asking them to do something. And so if that's the case, think about what else they're doing, right? Number 6, they got a ton of work to do. If you're trying to reach out to the government, of course they've got a lot of work to do, especially if you're reaching out to, let's say, the contracting officer in the last 2-3 months, right? It's been crazy, and it's not going to really stop being crazy. It's just going to be a different craziness. Or maybe they have a boss who came along and just dumped a bunch of work on their shoulders. There's a lot of these reasons, right? CPARs are due at the end of the year. They just awarded a bunch of contracts, right? At the end of the fiscal year, and now they have all these kickoff meetings. The projects have to get started. I have to make sure the security clearances are being processed. I got to make sure the Corps knows what they're doing. There's all these reasons that they might not respond. And when you think about these reasons, you stop thinking about it being you, and you begin realizing it's them, right? Unless they say no, the answer is yes or maybe, or I didn't even know you were asking a question. Right? But unless somebody says no, the answer is not no. So don't make it no for them. Be understanding. Seek first to understand that they're a busy person, and your job, if you want to build a relationship, is just to follow back up. So here's some lies we tell ourselves. When somebody's not responding to us, right? And I'd be really curious on any of these if they pop up in your mind as you're doing sales, as you're doing outreach. If you see or hear me say any of these, but the first one, right? Sometimes we think, they're going to hate me, right? I'm going to reach out and they're going to go, no, you're a small business, or you're this, or you're that. They're just going to hate me. They're not going to like me. The second one is they do actually hate me. I tell myself, oh, they just hate me. That's why they're not getting back to me. They're not responding to me. This isn't an insecure thing. This is trying to transfer the responsibility of following up to the other person by saying the reason we can't have a relationship is because they hate me. No legitimate reason, but they just hate me. Maybe somebody is saying bad. Number 3, someone said something bad about me. I think, man, did that one person I did a poor job for once come all the way to another agency and say something bad? Like, did this one mistake I made somewhere in some relationship now get spread to the millions of people in federal government contracting? We hold ourselves back wondering about that, worried about us. And then as we move into number 4, right, we start blaming the other person. They're just jerks. That's why they're not getting back. The reason that other person did not respond to me is they're a jerk. It's like, no, they're not. They're not a jerk. Well, if they're not a jerk, then number 5, they suck at their job. It's like they don't suck at their job. We just want to blame them and say they suck at their job because they're not responding. But we forgot that there's all these reasons people, us included, don't respond in a timely way, right? Number 6, we start worrying. I've called too many times. Maybe they're not going to respond because they're like, man, that Neil, he's emailed me 4 times and called me 3 times. I'm not getting back to them. That's just too persistent. That is one of the worst lies, and that's the meat of the training I'm going to teach in a minute. You can't call somebody too many times. You can be unprofessional. You can be inconsiderate. You can be a jerk, right? But you can't call somebody too many times. That's persistence. If you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I know you're super busy. I just wanted to bring my request back to the top of the inbox. If you get a chance, can you follow back up? If you say something like that, how can anybody ever think that you're being anything other than persistent in a professional way? Number 7, right? Maybe my email sucked. Maybe I wrote a poor email and or I left a poor voicemail and it wasn't really clear what they want. That's why when I teach people how to do outreach, I say, make it really clear. I'm calling to schedule a meeting. I'm available Tuesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. if it's convenient to you. I want to introduce my company and learn more about your agency, in particular this part. When you say something like that, it's really clear and they have the chance to say yes or no. Both answers are fine. Number 8, right? They have their favorites. This is where we start telling ourselves lies about how life is unfair. Yes, it is unfair, but if that's the game we're in, then that's just the reality, right? And so we start telling ourselves, that contracting officer, they have their favorites. They only work that way. I hear this all the time as it relates to good old boy systems in the military, right? That particular base, they've got their favorites. Well, they do. A lot of times they do. If you go to the Coast Guard, you hear about coasties, right? They Coast Guard likes to work with coasties. It's not in any kind of bad way. They just like to work with people who understand the Coast Guard. And so you worry about they have their favorites. Well, that's not why they're not responding to you. That might be why they're not going to work with you, but they haven't even talked to you yet. And so their favorites aren't holding you back. And the last one is, I hear this all the time, right? They picked the winner already. I get it. I get why you feel that sometimes, but that's not why people are calling us back. The reason they're not calling us back, in my experience, is we're not persistent enough. We're not looking at our process of reaching out to new people and figuring out, are we doing anything that could be improved as we move forward? So let's talk about improving some of this stuff. First thing I want to talk about is just how to increase your chances of successfully getting a response. If you reach out to a federal buyer, you want to make sure that they're going to not pick up the phone, but return your voicemail or return your email. That's your goal. When you're doing outreach to somebody new, you're just trying to get them to return your outreach. And so the first thing you want to do to increase your chances for success, and if you follow the 7-step process, right, it's research. And I don't mean research individuals. I'm opposed in sales to researching anybody more than 1-2 minutes at most before you schedule a meeting. If you do, you will find that you research a lot of people who you never ever meet. What I'm talking about here in number 1 is research their agency, understand their federal budget, which I said at the beginning of this training. Understand that budget and understand their strategic goals, their strategic objectives. Understand their organization and where you fit. Understand what they sell and or buy. I mean, for example, in the Navy, right? The Navy buys everything, but not every command buys everything. And so NAVC, Naval Sea Systems Command, they buy the water stuff, right? NAV Air buys the airplane stuff. I'm simplifying this, right? But NAVFAC Facilities buys the facility stuff to manage the installations of the bases for the Navy. And so understanding it demonstrates that you care. When you're able to do that and you start doing outreach, right? You don't want to do outreach one person at a time. You want to reach out to, 10, 20 a day. And I don't mean in a batch, I mean individually. But when you reach out, you're able to reference specific things. For example, one of my favorite ways to reach out is, hey, I just noticed your data strategy for 2022 to 2026. I just wanted to ask you a question about this, blah, 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 right? I'm going down. I wanted to dig deeper into that and talk about what we do. They're going to sit there and say, oh, you're reading our strategic plans. I'm demonstrating that I care. So if you're not researching and thinking about this first, then maybe your chances of success are not as strong as they could be. The second thing, and a bunch of these other ones, are this way to come at somebody from a different angle. So, and I have a whole separate training on this where I teach 20 different ways you can go at one person, right? If you think about where you're trying to get in, there's 20 different ways. So somebody in my team might be able to put that in there for you. But one of the easiest ways to increase your chances of somebody taking your phone call, returning your phone call, returning your email, is if you engage on LinkedIn. What I mean by engaging on LinkedIn is a thumbs up or a comment, right? When you do that, you're engaging with somebody's post. An example is, let's say, Darlene Bullock, just pull an example out of my hat, is the DHS OSB, right? If you happen to want to schedule a meeting with her or somebody on her team, etc. Well, she's engaged on LinkedIn. That's why I pulled her name up. And sometimes she posts things about whatever. Well, if you engage, give it a thumbs up, or if she posts something of interest and you go in, especially like an industry day slide deck, you go in and say, this is so great. Thank you for sharing. I especially found slide 5 valuable because of this reason. Well, you're engaging her content, but you're also pushing her content up in LinkedIn, and other people might engage more. She will appreciate that, but hardly anybody comments with any kind of substance these days. So if you do it, you will be memorable to her. I can pick whole areas like in DH or in the Navy. I can pick whole program executive offices where there's 42 or 60 people who work in that office. They're all on LinkedIn and there's stuff going on. You can begin to engage those people as you know you want to make progress into their organization or program office. Number 3 and 4, getting referrals, getting introductions. These are kind of the same thing. I have a customer I was talking to ironically over the weekend, but they were talking about they're really trying to get to this one major Army initiative that they've got a huge fan and a general officer who is supporting them, except for the general officer is not quite sure where to go. And so what this person has is the ability to get an introduction and referral. They just didn't know who. Well, now that they have the name, that's what they asked for my help on. They have the name, number, and email of this person. They're able to go back to this general and say, hey, can you make this referral? But it can also be at a much lower level than a general. I just picked that person because that's who I talked to this weekend. But you can get these introductions, right? Have somebody make an introduction that you already know. If you're brand new and you're trying to get into an organization, you want to contact a bunch of people, and I've got a ton of training on that to find your first person. But when you find them, they can make introductions, or they can give you the permission to drop their name, number 5, right? If you get permission to drop their name, then I can reach out to somebody and say, hey, I was talking to John Smith, and he said that you're the person to talk to. Can I schedule 15 minutes to get on your calendar, right? Something like that. When you name drop, you're increasing the chances that they'll answer your voicemail or your email when you put that into the message. And then the last thing is give, and ask. This is from a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, wrote a book about it. A lot of us understood this long before he wrote the book, but it's a good book. Giver's gain is another great attitude, but give, ask is this idea of give before you ask for anything. So if you're asking for a meeting, maybe you wait. And some of the things you could give is your expertise. The information in your head is not what companies and agencies are going to buy. They're going to buy your ability to execute on what's in your head, right? I teach what's in my head every single day. That I give, and you can do something similar. It doesn't have to be every day, but if you're trying to get into a particular office, how about send them a top 10 things you should pay attention to for elevator servicing, top 5 ways to use artificial intelligence or chat GPT to reduce your costs in acquisition support. Whatever it is, right? Whatever your expertise is, start sharing some of that. And you don't have to put it out on the internet the way I do. I'm talking about strategically sending it to Jane Smith and saying, Jane, I thought you and your team would value this. I'd welcome any feedback. And that's it. You don't ask for anything, you just drop it. And maybe do something else a little later. Sales is a long game, right? So you're building this relationship over a long period of time. Okay, so let's talk about how often you should follow up. This is a concern a lot of us have where we feel like we're a pest, right? We feel like we're annoying them. They're going to get mad if we just keep coming back. Really think about it yourself, though. If somebody's reaching out to you, for the most part, most of us will just sit there and at some point either respond, get used to ignoring it, or unsubscribe or whatever that is, right? So it's not like you get so mad at somebody else. And so your ability to follow up is persistence. And that thing is vital. And so I say here, follow up until you either get a no from the customer. No, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not going to make time for you. All right, that's cool. That is what it is. Or until you no longer want their business. And I've got to assume if you were going to reach out to somebody in the Army in the first place, as an example, then you want their business and you're never going to stop wanting their business. You just put them on this rotation. This is sales, right? You have a lead and you start pursuing them and you're trying to get a meeting and you're following up and you're doing different things to try to engage them. And depending on how important that lead is, you'll do more activity on it, right? You don't want to do a massive amount of, the tips I shared earlier about how to increase success on people who are lower down. But if you've got middle tier people, let's say directors or managers that you're trying to reach within an agency, then you can do some of that activity, but pursue them until you no longer want their business, which I assume will mean forever, right? And here on the right-hand side, I laid out a 30-day process for getting into and getting a meeting with an elusive person. And what I mean by elusive, by the way, if you want this checklist, just put checklist, please, into the chat. Checklist, please. Don't forget the please. It's always really important. But this 30-day process is telling somebody, how often should I follow up, right? And I put on the left-hand side some various ways you can follow up. Voicemail, email, LinkedIn. You can go to events and say, oh, hey, John, good to see you. Love to connect with you at some point. And they're going to go, sure, let's follow up. But you want to be able to follow up on some sort of regular pattern. And so here, it's hard for me to show it to you. So I'll read it a little bit. And if you want the handout, I can send it. But let me give you a general idea. Across the top, I have this 6 week process, right? Where you're following up every couple of days on a 6 week process. And so that totals 30 business days. And that's what I mean by a 30-day follow-up. And so in the first week, you're following up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'm beginning as if you just called them on a Monday. And then the next week, you do the same thing. And then you stagger it the weeks after that. So the first 2 weeks, you're reaching out 3 times. And then you reach out every week, twice a week. And you're just bouncing it around. And the ways that you can reach out are, you leave this initial call in the morning, let's say. And then you follow up with an email later in that day, same day. A couple of days later, 2 days later, you're following up with an email saying, hey, I just wanted to follow back up, bring it to the top of the inbox, etc. And then you wait a couple of days, right? Day 6, you're following, or day 5, you're coming back with a voicemail. You're staggering these voicemails and emails, but you're not giving up. I can tell you I have encountered a lot more experiences with people who have finally gotten through where somebody said, oh, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy. I've been meaning to call you back. I have heard that 10 times over every one time where somebody has a bad experience on it. Usually people aren't getting back to you. And so this follow-up process just makes it easier for you to go, nope, the process says I'm supposed to send a voicemail or leave a voicemail. Let me do that. It says I'm supposed to do an email. And if you put this into a spreadsheet or a CRM tool and you start tracking it, then you will get traction on these relationships and people will start responding back to your outreach. I got some tips on this handout as well, so you can track that. But here's what I want you to remember from today's training. The most important thing is don't take it personal, right? Remember that habit 5, seek first to understand that they're probably busy. They probably got stuff going on. But as long as you follow up more frequently, you're going to see the success in the outreach activity that you want to see. And so my task for you is to download that handout or ask me for that handout and I'll send it to you. And in that handout, take a minute to apply that to how you reach out to people. Ask yourself, am I really reaching out to people over a period of 6 weeks, twice a week, consistently, right? So that's a lot of times you're reaching out. Most people I find are reaching out 2 or 3 times at most, and usually they're spread across weeks. So your person you're trying to reach, you're forgetting. Speaking of forgetting, don't forget that we do the live trainings every single day. We've got 4 more trainings this week. Today is October 2nd, so you figure that out. The trainings are all on my LinkedIn profile. Make sure you subscribe to our LinkedIn newsletter so that you see the training in there. A lot of other good stuff in there, but see the training. Also, we've got 100 people here live today, right? So I want to make sure you're networking, not just in the chat, but come to our networking event. It's a no-nonsense networking event. It's our first one. It'll be on Zoom. It's October 17th. It'll be a big chance for you to meet a lot of other people. And then I just want you to remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is having a good day. I hope you do. I will see you in the next training.